Disrespected by my daughter-in-law, I discovered amazing strength after my life-changing recovery. Ed Thompson sat in his favorite worn-out recliner, staring out the window at the small Midwestern town that had cradled him for 65 years. The sun shone brightly, but it felt like shadows lingered inside him. Just weeks ago, he had been fighting for his life, a battle against health problems that left him weak and bewildered. Now, every ache reminded him he was no longer the man who could lift bags of cement without breaking a sweat. He felt like a ghost of himself. His heart sank further as he thought about Claire, his daughter-in-law. Her fresh ideas were supposed to bring life to the family, but instead, they felt like a wave crashing against the shore of his steadfast beliefs. Respect, family values. He had always taught. Yet here he was, feeling disrespected in his own home. Why can't she see? He muttered, gripping the armrests like a ship's will in stormy seas. Days passed, and the crux of his existence felt further away. His son, Mark, was caught unrealistically between two worlds: his modern wife's views and his father's traditional ones. Ed sensed the strain in Mark's smile, the way it didn't quite reach his eyes anymore. I'm doing all I can, Ed thought, trying to channel his energy into volunteering, lending a hand to the neighbors. Heartfelt conversations with children in the local schools put sparks back in his eyes. But even the warmth of giving back didn't repair his frayed relationships at home. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. A birthday party was planned, a family gathering meant to celebrate love and unity. But tension hung in the air like an electric storm. When Claire's remarks about old-fashioned thinking cut through the laughter, Ed's heart raced. It's not outdated, it's respect. His voice boomed in emotional heat, and words collided like thunder. This was supposed to be joy. Instead, it erupted into a cyclone of anger and hurt. Mark stood between them, helpless, eyes wide with disbelief. In the aftermath of the chaos, Ed knew he had a choice: cling to old wounds or search for a bridge. His heart felt heavy, but when he looked at Claire through the lens of compassion, something shifted. This wasn't just about her not understanding him, it was about understanding each other. As he took a breath, determination washed over Ed. He approached Claire, a shaky smile on his face. Can we talk? Vulnerability draped over them like a thin veil, while harsh words simmered beneath. The conversation turned into an emotional excavation, unearthing fears, pride, and wounds they both held. But just when it felt like some healing could happen, Mark confided secret pains, torn between valuing his father's wisdom and embracing his wife's fresh perspectives. Ed was caught in a whirlpool of unresolved emotions and unspoken words, left questioning if his voice could still matter in a world rapidly changing around him. The horizon was tinged with possibility and uncertainty, begging the question: could they overcome these burgeoning conflicts? Could compassion and understanding draw them together, or would life's tides keep pulling them apart? The answers waited just beyond the horizon, eager to unfold. As Ed sat in the dim light of his living room, the air still thick with the tension of the earlier confrontation, he stared at the wall lined with family photos. Pictures of laughter, first holidays, and family reunions. Those snapshots now felt like bittersweet reminders of a family he feared was slipping through his fingers. Claire's frustrations echoed in his mind: you're living in the past. The words stung, knitting anxiety in his chest. Letting out a deep sigh, he leaned back, letting the worn fabric of the recliner cradle him. He remembered his own father's steadfastness, the way his advice always seemed immutable. Yet here he was, having to accept that change was creeping in like an uninvited guest. He thought of Mark. Just the sight of his son trying to balance his love for Claire with loyalty to his father made Ed's heart ache. Mark was caught in the crossfire, and that realization flickered a spark of determination in Ed. The thoughts of change and love whirled in Ed's mind, forcing him to confront a deeper truth. If he wanted to restore the family bond, he'd need to meet Claire halfway. He couldn't fight against the tide. He had to learn to navigate it. The next day, Ed took a deep breath, filled with unexpected courage, and picked up the phone. He called Claire. Her hesitant voice on the other end sent a thrill of surprise through him. "What can I do for you, Ed?" she asked cautiously. He opened the door to vulnerability, speaking from a place of sincerity. "I know things have been hard between us. I want to find a way to understand and support each other better." Claire paused, the silence heavy with unspoken emotions. "I didn't mean to disrespect you. It's just that I believe our family needs new ideas to thrive." His heart softened, hearing the genuine care in her voice. "And I believe our family needs the roots of what makes us strong." They talked for hours, struggling through emotions like sculptors carving rough stone into beauty. Claire shared the pressures she felt trying to honor her own family traditions while blending into theirs. Ed opened up about his fears of becoming irrelevant, like an old storybook gathering dust on a shelf. By the end of their conversation, there was a bridge being built, one word at a time. Ed felt like he had shared a piece of himself, and somehow, that created a crack in the wall. But just as they were finding some common ground, Mark walked in, a frown dancing on his face. "What is going on in here?" He looked back and forth between them, worry lines deepening on his forehead. "What we're discussing," Ed started tentatively, but Mark interrupted. "I just want us to be okay. I feel like it's driving a wedge between you both." The words hung in the air, raw and real. It struck Ed how much Mark needed reassurance. The family bond was at stake, and Ed realized this wasn't just about his relationship with Claire or Mark. It was about all of them finding their way together. With a deep breath, Ed looked at his son, his heart pounding. "Mark, can we be honest with each other? It feels like we're all trying not to hurt each other, but we need to talk." Mark nodded, uncertainty written all over his face, and Ed felt the weight of their shared fear lift a little. They were stepping into uncharted territory, but perhaps it was time for new traditions to emerge, rooted in love and understanding. As the trio began to navigate this new path together, Ed wondered if they could truly heal the rifts that had formed. Would this be the long-awaited breakthrough? Or were there deeper wounds still hidden, waiting to be unearthed? Mark shifted on his feet, the uncertainty in his eyes telling Ed how badly he wanted to bridge the gap. Ed could feel the energy of the room crackle with tension. This was big. They were teetering on something raw and real. "Okay, let us not dance around this," Mark said, his voice steadier now, like he'd made a decision. "I see you two struggling. What if we tried something different? A family meeting every week or something? We can hash out issues before they explode." Ed blinked, caught off guard by his son's suggestion. A family meeting? The idea was unfamiliar yet oddly comforting. It felt proactive, a way to catch storms before they turned to hurricanes. Ed glanced at Claire, searching for a hint of agreement. Claire's brow furrowed, pondering the thought. "That actually might work," she admitted slowly. "It would give us a space to express what we feel instead of bottling it up." "Exactly," Mark replied, relief spreading across his face. "We could make it a safe space. Everyone can bring their concerns, their joys. It's not just about fixing problems but celebrating what we have too." For a moment, Ed couldn't help but smile. Hope bubbled in his chest like a warm spring day after a long winter. Maybe they could weave something new together, something that honored the past while embracing the future. "Okay," Ed said, his voice firm yet gentle. "I think family meetings could be a great start. We need to make this work." He glanced back at Mark, who looked eager but also a bit nervous. "You know, Mark, we can all help each other. If it means less worry for you, we should definitely try it. Just promise not to make it boring," Claire teased, breaking the serious atmosphere that had enveloped them. Mark chuckled, the sound filling the space between them with lightness, and Ed couldn't help but join in. Laughter always felt like a good sign. As they milled over the idea, sharing half-hearted jokes and projecting their desires for this new chapter, Ed began to feel something he hadn't in a while, a sense of belonging, an affirmation that maybe they could shed the layers of hurt and start fresh. His phone buzzed, slicing through their moment of levity. It was a message from his sister, Julie, asking about a family gathering they had planned. An idea struck him. Why don't we do our first family meeting at the gathering? It's the perfect setting, with everyone there. We can invite the whole clan. Claire raised an eyebrow. You mean invite everyone? What if it gets out of hand? Ed shrugged, but his smile never wavered. Then we deal with it together. No one knows us like family does. If we can work on our bond in front of them, it might help bridge this divide. Mark's eyes lit up at the thought. That could actually be awesome. A family intervention, of sorts. Claire bit her lip. I'll admit, I'm a little nervous about the thought of that. But if we're going to make this change, then why not? The excitement in the room lifted, and they spoke over one another, brainstorming ways to blend the old traditions with a fresh approach. But as Ed glanced at Mark, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. What if they stepped beyond just talking? What if this gathering revealed deeper issues lurking beneath the surface? And as they made plans and voiced hopes, Ed felt that nagging worry echo in his mind. Could they truly navigate the storm ahead, or was change only an illusion held together by fragile threads? With each passing moment, the looming uncertainties grew heavier, hanging over this fragile peace like clouds before a rainstorm. As the discussion swirled around them, Ed's mind drifted back to the last family gathering. How laughter bounced off the walls, how the smell of Julia's famous lasagna filled the air, and how they all felt, if just for a moment, like they were untouchable. Could they capture that feeling again? All right, Mark said, bringing Ed back. When do we want to schedule this? His eagerness fluttered in the air like a kite caught in a breeze. Let's aim for next Sunday, Claire suggested, her tone infused with a blend of hope and uncertainty. It feels fitting. It'll be fresh after a week of life before we meet with the whole family. Sunday it is. Ed confirmed, his heart rising just thinking about the potential of it all. We can prepare our thoughts in the meantime, maybe even get some snacks for everyone. He was beginning to see this meeting not as a task, but as a celebration, a chance to connect. As they talked logistics, Ed also sensed the shadows lurking in the corners of his mind, whispers of doubt that crept in quietly. Would everyone really come? What if they showed up unprepared, venting frustrations they had kept buried for too long? What if it all went wrong? But pushing aside those thoughts, Ed focused on the moment. In that crackling atmosphere filled with tentative excitement, he noticed Mark, his son, and the way he carried himself, like he was ready to take on the world. It made Ed's heart swell with pride. Hey, just to encourage open communication, he said, what do you think we should do if things get heated? We can't risk it turning into a chaotic shouting match. Mark's laughter rang out again, lightening the mood. Maybe a throw pillow. If you're holding a pillow, you can't yell. Claire chuckled, but Ed could see contemplation in her eyes. And we could have a talking stick or something. Whoever is holding it gets to speak, and no one else interrupts until they finish. Right. Mark nodded. I like that. It helps everyone feel heard. Just make sure it's not a heavy object or we might start tossing it. They all laughed, but Ed felt the seriousness beneath it. The laughter was good, but it couldn't mask the fact that they were all teetering on the edge of vulnerability. He could see Claire's resolve as solid as the earth underneath them, but he also sensed deep-rooted tensions wanting to break free. This isn't just a family meeting, Ed finally said, voice grounded. It's a chance to breathe life back in, to really understand each other. We need to approach this with love. Remember, we're family, and that's strongest when we're honest. With those words hanging in the air, Ed felt a flicker of resolve. The uncertainty and anxiety that had clouded the horizon before seemed a little less daunting now. It was a storm, yes, but they were setting sail together, yet even as the warmth of hope wrapped around them, a thought snuck into his mind, dark and unwelcome. What if someone held on to hate more than love? What if secrets lay buried, just waiting for the right moment to erupt? They agreed to gather more family stories, anecdotes to lighten the mood, things that united them in laughter. But as they wrapped up their night, Ed found himself staring at the family picture hanging on the wall, smiles frozen in time. Would they still look like that after the meeting? When your family faces the truth, it can either break bonds or forge them anew. He felt the tension prick his skin, and the importance of what was to come settled heavily in the back of his mind. Could they truly rewrite their story, or would the past continue to haunt each moment? The thunder in the distance made Ed wonder what surprises lay hidden within their upcoming gathering. And just like that, the uncertainty hung over him, pressing against his chest as they all prepared for the ride ahead. The days leading up to the family gathering seemed to stretch like taffy, both sweet and sticky. Ed found himself replaying the conversation with Claire and Mark over and over. Thoughts of laughter and bonding filled his heart, but the apprehension simmered just below the surface. That Sunday dawned bright and sunny, the kind of day when the world feels full of promise. Ed stood in the kitchen, coffee brewed strong and bubbling, the air tinged with the tang of cinnamon from the apple pie he had decided to bake the family's favorite. Each slice would carry a piece of his love, or at least that was the hope. As he pulled the pie from the oven, the doorbell rang, startling him. His heart raced. This was it. Come in, he called, wiping his hands on a dish towel. Julia, Mark's wife, stepped in with a bright smile, but Ed could see shadows dancing in her eyes. The tension hung in the space between them like a thick fog. She set down an oversized salad she had prepared, almost too perfect, and for a brief moment, Ed felt hope flicker. Could this day be different? Hey, Ed. That pie smells incredible, Julia said, a forced enthusiasm in her voice. Thanks. Just a little something to sweeten the deal, he replied, trying to mirror her cheer while hiding his own unease. As the evening approached, family members began to trickle in one by one. Laughter mingled with the comforting aromas filling the room, but every laugh felt layered with unresolved tension. Ed busied himself in the kitchen, stealing quick glances at the gathering happening in the living room, where stories were starting to unfold. Hey, everyone. I think we should start, Mark announced, his voice cutting through the noise. The family huddled closer together, and Ed felt the weight of all those lingering thoughts pressing against him. Mark passed the talking stick, a small polished rock they had found while hiking. We'll go around the circle, and you can say whatever is on your mind. Just remember, respect is key. The first few voices floated easily through the air, sharing laughter and light moments from the past. But then Claire took a deep breath, her expression shifting like a cloud passing over the sun. I think it's time we talk about how we've been avoiding the hard things. She started, her voice wavering. The room fell silent, eyes wide, hope straining against fear. Julia stiffened, a flicker of something unreadable washing over her face. Amen to that, she muttered, an edge creeping into her tone. Ed's heart sank as Julia's eyes met Claire's, a battle brewing under the surface. The room held its breath, the slightest ripple of unease spreading like a chill. I mean, it's easy to stand here and joke, Julia continued, her words sharp and deliberate. But what about the real issues? We can't just put on a show every time. The silence that followed felt electric. Ed searched Julia's face for anything pain, vulnerability, but all he found was fire. Mark's eyes darted back and forth between his wife and his mother, looking like he was ready to step in. What do you mean, Julia? She took a breath. Every time we gather, I feel like I'm walking on eggshells. Why is that? I love you all, but sometimes it feels like we're just pretending. Claire looked stunned, her mouth opening slightly, a fish caught in a net. Ed gripped the talking stick, feeling the smooth rock deepen the tension. Forceful words danced on the edge of his tongue, but instead, he chose to listen. Maybe that's how we start, he said softly, feeling the weight of their collective pain. Let us be honest, even if it hurts. As they began to share the deeper wounds that had stitched them apart, Ed felt the air shift. Maybe this was the reckoning they had needed all along. The pie sat untouched on the counter, symbolizing all the sweetness they were hoping to bring back. The moment of truth was upon them, and Ed could sense it, a stirring in his chest. But as voices rose and fell, another thought nagged at him: could they really pull through? What threatened to surface next could either tear them apart or stitch them together tighter than ever. And in that swirling mix of emotions, a single question echoed in his mind: Was this just the beginning of revelation or the tipping point of chaos? Ed's heart raced as voices began to overlap, each emotion swirling and colliding in the small living room. Julia had ignited a fire, and the sparks were flying fast. The walls, once a comforting backdrop, now felt like they were closing in, suffocating all the unspoken truths. Claire's face flushed, her eyes darting to Ed for reassurance. "I thought we were," she began, her voice cracking. "I thought we were just trying to support each other." Julia shot her a look filled with frustration. "Support means facing the truth. It doesn't mean we have to pretend everything is perfect." A nervous murmur rippled through the family. Ed could see it on their faces: uncertainty, confusion, and a flicker of hope battling with dread. The apple pie still sat on the counter, its golden crust taunting him, a symbol of what they aimed to restore but felt so far away. "Maybe Julia is right," Mark said, attempting to ease the tension with calm words. "We've been avoiding the hard stuff for too long." He exchanged uneasy glances with his wife. Ed hesitated, the weight of the rock in his hand grounding him. He had always absorbed the family's tension, a quiet observer, but tonight felt different. "It's not just about the past," he said, his voice gaining strength. "It's about how we move forward together." "What do you mean?" Claire asked, her eyes narrowing as if trying to discern the map of emotions Ed was tracing. "The scars we carry," Ed continued, his gaze sweeping around the room, landing on each family member's face, "can either tear us apart or bond us. But it starts with being honest, right? Just like we did when we found our way through." His voice faded, recalling their shared struggles, the losses, and the triumphant moments that defined their family. The air thickened again, but this time it felt less stifling. Ed could sense the fragile threads that bound them, ready to untangle or redefine themselves depending on how they chose to navigate this storm. Julia's tender expression softened, disbelief flickering on her face. "You really think we can?" Ed nodded slowly, desire blooming in his chest. "We have to. This isn't just for us, it's for our kids. They deserve to see us as whole, not just broken pieces." A pained silence settled, contrasting beautifully with the warmth of the pie behind him. Claire's eyes filled with unshed tears, as her shoulders relaxed. "I want that, too. I just didn't know how to start." Mark tucked his thumbs into his jeans pockets, his brows knitting together. "Then let us start here. Let us tell our truths, even if it makes us uncomfortable. It might be what we need to heal." As the family began to share their stories, Ed felt a wave of vulnerability wash over them. The truths spilled out, raw and real, like an open wound yearning to breathe. The childhood pranks, the niggling resentments, and long-buried grief came tumbling forth like stones rolling down a hill. Ed felt his heart swell and break simultaneously. A weight lifted and all he could think was maybe, just maybe, they would come out of this stronger. Each voice added color to the painful tapestry they'd woven, showing the depth of their shared experience. Then, Claire, practicing the art of candor, spoke with a tremor in her voice. "I want you to understand that I didn't want to hurt anyone. I just felt invisible, pushed aside." Julia blinked back tears, her facade beginning to crack. "I get that. I feel that way, too." Contentment brushed Ed's heart as he realized how the evening was morphing from chaos into clarity. But just as shadows of resolutions swirled, a sudden noise made them all freeze. A loud crash echoed from the kitchen, sending shockwaves through the room. "What was that?" Mark exclaimed as they turned simultaneously toward the source of the sound, and Ed's pulse quickened. They were on the brink of something monumental, yet an unexpected blow had just landed. Would it shatter the fragile atmosphere they had fought to build, or push them to face yet another layer of truth? The night was far from over. The kitchen door swung open with a shudder, revealing the scene that sent ripples of panic through Ed. There, sprawled on the floor, lay a broken plate, fragments glimmering under the flickering lights. The smell of cinnamon and apples mingled with the fresh scent of cut vegetables, creating a strange juxtaposition that turned the sweetness of the moment sour. Mark rushed to sweep up the shards, his movements rapid and tense. "It's just a plate," he said, a bit too quickly, as though trying to dismiss the unease simmering just beneath the surface. His face was a cocktail of worry and embarrassment. Just a plate? Julia's voice cracked like thin ice, as she shot him a baffled look. It's not about the plate. Ed felt a surge of emotion pulse through him. It wasn't just about that broken plate. It was representative of all the fragility in their lives. Meanwhile, Claire shifted nervously, her arms wrapping around herself, mirroring the tension in the room. Let us focus on what's happening here, Ed interjected, stepping forward with deliberate calm. That crash was just a sign, like a wake-up call. It's loud enough to remind us to confront what we've been avoiding. The group froze, their gazes locked on Ed, as if he'd just unveiled a huge revelation. Julia's brows furrowed, and for a moment, Ed could see the flicker of curiosity battling with her frustration. Maybe it is a sign, Claire said softly, her voice breaking the taut air. Maybe it means we can't keep things inside anymore. There was a thrum of agreement, a collective exhale that echoed in the stillness around them. Even the cheesecake on the counter seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the next move. I've buried my feelings too, Ed admitted, voice thick with emotion. We've all held back. But real strength comes from acknowledging what we're afraid of. Julia stepped forward, her hands trembling. I feel I don't measure up. The pressure, this idea of perfection, it suffocates me. I feel that too, Claire nodded, her tears spilling over. I thought by hiding my hurt, I could spare you all from it. But I just made it worse. The honesty hung heavy in the air, binding them like a tapestry woven from threads of vulnerability and hope. Mark looked between the two women, a spark of understanding igniting in his chest. We're not perfect, he said gently. None of us are. We're a family messy, contradictory, and real. Isn't that what makes us strong? Ed admired Mark's effort to bridge the gap. There was warmth in his tone that seemed to light up the room. The chatter had died down, and for the first time in what felt like ages, they were all on the same page. Sharing heartbreaks that had been long hidden, they touched on moments in their lives that had fueled resentment and anger. A fresh collision of truths filled the air, but this time instead of chaos, it felt like thread unraveling, giving them a new chance to weave something beautiful together. Ed could almost feel the world around them shifting, the unsteady ground beneath them slowly solidifying. But just then, the doorbell rang. It sliced through the atmosphere like a knife, bringing with it a renewed sense of urgency. Who could that be? Claire murmured, wiping her tears hastily. Ed blinked, his heart racing again. What could interrupt this moment of honesty? Who waited outside their door, ready to shake up everything they had just begun reconstructing? As they exchanged looks laced with uncertainty, Ed took a deep breath. Tonight was meant to be a reset, but maybe the world was not done presenting challenges. The echo of the doorbell lingered like an uninvited question, enticing them to discover not just what lay behind the door but what more awaited them inside their hearts. Ed approached the door slowly, each step heavy with anticipation. He glanced back at the others gathered in the kitchen, their expressions a mix of worry and curiosity. Julia wrung her hands, Claire dabbed at her eyes, and Mark stood with his hands at his sides, trying to project calm. Should I open it? Ed asked, his voice wavering slightly. No. We should just wait and see who it is, Julia replied, her tone sharp with unease. Maybe it's nothing, Mark suggested, though his own doubts were evident. The air felt thick, charged with a tension that wrapped around them like a tight blanket. Taking another breath, Ed placed his hand on the doorknob. 1,000 questions surged through his mind, but what if it was someone from their past? Someone who could disrupt this fragile moment of connection they had finally begun to weave. He turned the knob, his heart racing, and pulled the door open. On the other side stood a figure he hadn't expected. It was Sarah, a distant cousin he hadn't seen in years. Her presence was both familiar and jarring. Ed, she said, her voice a hushed whisper. I need to talk to you. Ed felt a wave of emotion crash inside him. Sarah looked different. Her once bright smile was replaced by worry and fear. What happened? he asked, stepping aside to let her in. The kitchen felt smaller as she entered, the weight of her presence adding to the intensity of the night. Sarah's eyes darted to the broken plate on the floor, then back to Ed. "I know this isn't the best time, but I'm not sure who else to turn to. I'm in trouble, Ed." The room shifted, the group tightened together, absorbing her news. "What kind of trouble?" Ed asked cautiously. His instincts kicked in, urging him to protect the fragile moment they had just begun to forge. "I can't explain everything right now," she said, her voice trembling, "but I think someone's watching me. I can feel it." Ed's throat tightened, a mixture of fear and concern washing over him. Instinctively, he glanced at Julia and Mark, their shared expressions echoing his alarm. Claire stepped forward, her earlier sadness replaced by newfound determination. "You're safe here, Sarah. You can stay with us." "Are you sure?" she asked, vulnerability lacing her question. "Absolutely," Mark affirmed. "No one should go through this alone." Ed felt the shift intensifying. This wasn't the reset he had envisioned, but it felt undeniably important. The notion of family, however messy, stretched to welcome Sarah. It was clearly what they all needed right now. Without warning, a flash of memory jolted through him, an argument with his father from years ago that had left him feeling unworthy. He was reminded of how isolation could breed fear and uncertainty. They didn't want any more secrets in this house. "But this complicates everything," Julia's voice broke through his thoughts. "We were just starting to heal, I know," Claire interjected, "but healing doesn't just happen in a vacuum. It needs connection, even when unexpected events shake things up." Ed felt the flicker of understanding wrap around the group, stringing them together with a shared purpose. They had faced their own vulnerabilities tonight, and now it was time to support one another through Sarah's pain. "Let us talk," he said gently to Sarah, motioning for her to sit at the table. "Whatever it is, we're family. We can face it together." As Sarah settled into the chair, Ed noticed the tension start to ease, a reminder that strength often blooms in the heart of adversity. He felt something shift within himself too, a resolve forming. Tonight wasn't just about mending their own hurts, it was about renewing their commitment to one another as a united front. But as the conversation began to unfold, Ed sensed shadows lurking just beyond their walls. Despite the warmth of connection blossoming in the kitchen, he couldn't shake the feeling of something darker lurking just outside their threshold, waiting for the perfect moment to creep back into their lives. Would they be prepared for what lay ahead? Would they fight together or falter? Ed couldn't shake the thought as he focused on Sarah. As the night grew deeper, so did the questions. What secrets would surface, and what unseen battles would they have to face next? As Sarah took her seat, the atmosphere in the kitchen shifted again. A quiet tension hung in the air, but it was underlined by a growing sense of urgency. Ed could see the uncertainty in Sarah's eyes, but he also sensed that revealing the truth could either break them or fortify their bond. "What's really going on, Sarah?" Ed prompted gently, trying to draw her out of the shadow of fear that seemed to envelop her. The other three leaned in, their expressions a blend of curiosity and concern. Eager for answers, she hesitated, casting her gaze around the familiar faces, each one bearing the weight of their own struggles yet connected through shared history. "It's not just me. There's something bigger," she whispered, her voice quivering. "My neighbor, he's been acting really strange. At first, I thought I was imagining it, but last week I noticed him staring through my window. The lights in my house would flicker randomly. My car was tampered with." The room fell silent. Claire's hand flew to her mouth, a rush of horror spreading across her features. Mark clenched his fists, his protective instincts flaring. Julia looked at Ed, worry etched on her face. "Why didn't you say anything sooner?" Julia asked, her voice trembling with a mix of frustration and empathy. "You shouldn't have to deal with this alone." "I didn't want to worry anyone," Sarah replied, her voice choking up. "And I thought I could handle it." "But you don't have to," Ed insisted, pushing away the gnawing anxiety inside him. "We're here for you. We'll figure this out together." Sarah met his gaze, and for a brief moment, Ed felt as if he was looking at a reflection of his own past fears, the struggles he'd faced alone. Suddenly, a thought struck him. Do you have evidence? Any proof of what he has done? I took some pictures, Sarah mumbled, digging around in her bag. After a few moments, she produced her phone and hesitated before showing them. The images were grainy, but they told a troubling story, blurry shots of the neighbor lurking outside her home. It was chilling to see them flashing across the screen, and Ed felt his resolve hardening. This is serious, Mark said, leaning forward. We need to go to the police. You can't just sit here and hope it will go away. No. Sarah's voice was unexpectedly sharp. I'm scared of what might happen if I report him. What if he retaliates? Ed could feel the gravity of her words, but he also sensed something else welling within the group, a collective determination. Listen, we can stay alert. We'll make sure you're safe, Claire said, her voice filled with calm assurance. But we need to take this seriously. Julia nodded, the fight gradually fading from her tone. We can work together. If he knows we're all watching, it might deter him. The flicker of hope sparked in Sarah's eyes. You'd really do that for me? Of course, Ed replied firmly. We're family, and family stands together through anything. This isn't just your battle, it's ours too. As the group began to discuss their next steps, Ed felt a growing sense of purpose. They were not just facing Sarah's fears, they were confronting their own. Each of them had been broken, but together they were beginning to heal. This was what being family was all about, showing up for one another when it mattered most. But as the plans took shape, a sound broke through the kitchen, a faint but unsettling noise, like the soft creak of the floorboards from just outside. Ed's heart raced again. Had someone been listening? What was that? Julia's own fear heightened the atmosphere, and Sarah went pale, her eyes wide with panic. They had opened a door that could lead to ominous truths. What if the real threat was closer than they realized? Ed stood up straighter, determined to protect the kinship they were building, even if the shadows lurking outside were inching closer. Would their bond be enough to face what awaited them? And what secrets were they still hiding from each other? Ed gathered his strength, channeling the resolve that had flickered to life during their emotionally charged gathering. With a deep breath, he stepped toward the door, the wooden barrier feeling heavier than before. Every creak of the floor seemed magnified, underscoring the urgency that enveloped the room. Stay here, he whispered, glancing back at the concerned faces of his family. Shadows played tricks on his mind as he gripped the doorknob tightly. He opened the door slowly, every inch revealing the quiet night. The crisp air washed over him, grounding him in the moment. However, the porch was empty, save for the night's stillness. For a heartbeat, Ed felt relief wash over him like a gentle tide, but the nagging sense of unease still lingered. Returning to the kitchen, he noticed Sarah's wide eyes darting anxiously from him to the others. I didn't see anything, just the dark, he reassured her gently. But doubt crept in around the edges of his words. But we won't ignore it. We need to stay aware. Claire stepped forward, placing a hand on Sarah's shoulder. Let us stay together, tonight and moving forward. We can set up a watch throughout the night. No one should feel unsafe in their own home. The determination in her voice put a protective spell over the group, igniting strength in their hearts. Mark nodded, the gravity of the situation sinking in. I'll camp out on the couch, eyes open. We'll keep the lights on and stay alert. With every word shared, Ed felt the bond strengthening, a collective decision to protect one another. As they settled into their unconventional watch party, the kitchen transformed into a sanctuary of caring. The air filled with soft chatter about what they might do next as they kept a watchful eye on the windows and doors. Perhaps this spiraling night wouldn't unwind into chaos after all. Maybe it was the catalyst they needed. Laughter intermingled with the fear as Sarah pulled out her phone, sharing pictures of family memories that brought a sense of warmth, reminding them of their roots. Each chuckle felt like a string tying them closer, knitting together love and support in a moment of uncertainty. As they shared stories, healing words began to heal their hearts, too. Remember our camping trip? Julia laughed, her voice ringing with nostalgia. Even when we fought around the campfire, we always managed to laugh it off under the stars. The shared memories crashed against the darkness, illuminating the bond they were building once again, but as the late hours crept on, Ed's attention strayed back to Sarah. The fear in her eyes told a story of its own, one of vulnerability and strength in facing an unseen adversary. "Sarah, are you okay?" he asked gently, breaking through their lively banter. Taking a shaky breath, she nodded, but the shadow of her fear lingered. "This is just so overwhelming. I never thought my life would spiral like this." Ed leaned in, letting the weight of his words brush against her heart. "You're not alone. We're watching out for you, but we're also family, and that means more than just safety. It means support." He smiled softly as he added, "You've brought us together, Sarah. Together is how we face down the demons." Time wove through the fabric of the night, and with every hour, they drew closer, like stars connecting across a vast sky. Ed felt hope blossoming, mixing with the strength of shared fears, flickering brightly against the horizon of uncertainty, but just as they marked a newfound resolve, their conversations were pierced by another sound: footfalls outside, echoing like thunder in the quiet night. Ed's heart clenched. "Did you hear that?" he hissed. The kitchen fell silent, every member of the family frozen, their breaths shallow with suspense. Peering out through the window, Ed squinted against the darkness. A figure lingered at the edge of the yard, barely visible, an anomaly standing at the precipice of their safety. "What do we do?" Sarah whispered, anxiety cracking her voice. With a solid breath, Ed felt the weight of his family at his back. "Together," he said, emboldened. "We face it together." He opened the door, stepping forward into the shadowy night, his heart pounding but his resolve unyielding. This was not just about Sarah any longer, this was about each of them. The figure turned, and Ed's vision sharpened. "Who are you?" he called out, voice steady, but the tension thickened the air around them. The figure stepped into the light. Tension shifted as Ed's realization set in. It was the neighbor, trembling, eyes wide with discomfort. "Please, I need to talk to you, I'm scared." Ed felt the world crack open as the barrier between fear and safety teetered. But instead of anger rising within, a whisper of understanding crept through him. They may be facing a darkness that felt unending, but within that chaos, his family had revealed unimaginable strength and love. After tonight, perhaps they could rewrite the narrative woven between them. The power of vulnerability intertwined with hope surged within Ed as they prepared to face whatever shadows lay ahead. Hope radiated, connecting them all, weaving family ties anew against the backdrop of the unknown, and in that moment, he knew they could overcome any darkness together. As this chapter of their lives drew to a close, yet another opened. Don't let this journey end here. You need to subscribe now to stay with us for every exclusive story. Leave a like now to help us reach hearts just like yours. Comment below with your thoughts on the healing power of family. And share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need inspiration in their lives. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait not even one more second to share.